Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joel, one of your hosts, and with me as always is your other studious co-host,
Brian. Hi.
I remarkable professionalism there because I could see you corpsing about something as I was...
I just realized you do the same like facial expression every time you do welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals, and it's this. You just scrunch your face up like you're being like an old-timey radio jockey.
This face you're doing is unhelpful for all your listeners. And you also make me sound like, your impersonation of me is like, this is the largest podcast I can afford. Yeah.
I was thinking more Eeyore.
Eeyore?
Yeah.
Oh, the donkey, not the medical drama from the 90s.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we're here to talk about Buffy.
Yeah.
Season 5, episode 15, I Was Made For You.
To love you. Yeah. So
I was made to love you. Pardon me.
Yeah, because
I might need to change some podcast art now.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Fuck's sake. It's based on the song by Frank Sinatra, right? Am I right there? I just realized that I didn't actually look up the date that this is released on, so I am now googling it, and I'm going to see how much I can actually speak while talking about it. Okay, got it. So this episode was directed by James A. Contner, who last directed The Replacement, and was written by Jane Espenson, who last wrote Checkpoint. Yeah, it's very Jane Espenson episode. It has a real sense of that. It was first aired on February 20th, 2001. If you heard a little knock on a little bit of wood there, it's because I dropped my hand and Booker shoved his face into my hand and knocked it against the chair.
Fully headbutted, yeah.
He's very forceful in his love, which I appreciate. Okay, so here is your Buffy and summary.
Speaking of forceful love.
Oh, that's what this episode is.
There's a lot of episodes out there, yeah.
That's quite accurate. Booker, what the fuck?
Booker wants to be in the podcast too.
Mysterious April arrives looking for her boyfriend Warren. She beats up Spike for chatting her up. Everyone realizes she is a robot build as Warren's girlfriend and abandoned when he found a real one, Katrina. Buffy saves his fiancée from April and then sits with April as her batteries run down. Spike orders a Buffy bot from Warren. Buffy finds Joyce dead.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
A spoiler alert, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll get into all that in a second, I suppose. Joe, for our Bronze Banter, you wanted to talk about the movie we watched last night, which was Yes, God, Yes.
Yeah, it was very fresh in our minds. So it was on Netflix. It was you pictured me as having queer content, which it doesn't.
No, not really.
There are queer people in it briefly, but it's not the central premise that we thought it was.
No, I thought it was much more queer stuff. We're gonna have to watch Holiday Special, or what's called the one with
Aubrey Plaza and Kristen Stewart.
Yeah. We're gonna have to watch that because that actually has queer content.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a kind of a bit of a sleeper. Sleeper hit isn't the word I'm looking for, but it was a surprising film.
Yeah, it was a bit of a slow burn.
It was. I there's something about films when we watched His House and all that. Just films that are touted as released in 2020 seem very uncanny to me.
His House.
His House, yeah, that was the one, the horror film we watched.
Oh, yeah.
But that was also released, 2020, which I think
bizarre.
is bizarre. But this film, it was very lean, very sprightly. It was a very digestible 77 minutes long for a film, which I find so bizarre.
Yeah, and you mentioned it like 8 times while we were watching.
I find it really strange. And it's essentially the girl who plays, Nancy on Stranger Things.
Which that must be coming back soon, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Good.
And she is in a very Christian, very Catholic specifically, school in America. These are all details we only found out as we were watching in terms of the premise in the 90s.
No, 2001.
Oh, 2001, pardon me, sorry, early 2000s. And so she goes away to she's having all these...
she's horny.
She's horny. She's having all these lusty feelings. And to deal with this in part, she goes away to a 4-day retreat with the school.
Is it a 4-day retreat, Joel?
It is actually, yeah.
Oh, is it? I thought it was a 3-day retreat.
Well, the 4th day is kind of the wrap up. Anyways, the whole thing.
Okay.
A 4-day retreat called the Kirkhouse Retreat, which is a barely distinct satire / portrayal of a real thing, which is called the Kairos Retreat, which is a very American Catholic concept, and is also something which I did in school.
Because you went to a Philly Jesuit school.
We did. It's a lot of her. It's very just a tight, funny story about her kind of dealing with these, sexual feelings, and also the contradictions that are, inherent in people being like, absolutely no sexuality until marriage and then only for procreation, and then being flogged people within that. But really just a lot of quite enjoyably, disturbingly accurate portrayals of things like Snake on Nokia phones and email
the
chains.
Nokia 3310 specifically. What a phone.
Yeah, email chains from like early MSN Messenger periods, and just loads of details, which or like, what was it?
It was AOL for sure. But
AOL, and it was the album, what was it, Blink 182's Enema of the State.
AIM is what this was. AIM, and yes, it was Enema of the State.
And someone was trying to put that on their new MP3 player.
Yeah,
and it was the whole thing.
The kid was like, you'd know all about enemas, wouldn't you? And everyone was like, what? And then one of the other kids was like, yeah, an enema is when you're going skiing and you fall on your butt and some water goes up your butt.
It was very fun. But yeah, specifically, I suppose like the unexpected meat in the sandwich for me was like, I as Brian mentioned, I went to a Jesuit school. They're very focused on, learning about God by your actions, by giving back in this very practical manner, and about things like the Kairos retreat, which
sounds gay.
One of their unofficial mottos was also "Give us the boy, and we'll give you the man."
And one of your graduation songs was "Proud" by Heather Small, right?
I have no problem with that.
One of the most
it's a very iconic
gay anthems.
Yeah, but yeah, so the
done to make you
you're
feel
going to get us the MCA, bro.
No.
And yeah, so this retreat is kind of about there's a load of weird cult-like elements to it, which the first one being that you're not meant to talk about when you come back to like people who haven't been. So it creates this whole air of like you have to really take part in it to understand.
It's literally a cult.
They take away your phones, they take away your contact with the outside world, they put you in situations where you're expected to really talk at length about your trauma in groups, large groups. And yeah, this whole kind of like culture mentality of like on the first day you do this, the second day, etc., and then the mantra being live the fourth. So the fourth day is when you leave, but you also are trapped in this hell dimension forever, essentially.
Another way of putting that would be, may the fourth be with you.
No, you wouldn't say that. And yeah, so I specifically had that exact experience in school. They gave you a necklace. They did give us a necklace of a particularly strange, again, occult like crucifix.
Which when we first started dating in like 2011, when you were drunk at parties, other people who had also been on Kairos used to bump crosses with them, Kairos crosses.
Yeah.
It was the most disturbing thing I've ever seen.
And one of the reasons I joined Twitter in the nascent days back in kind of 2008, 2009, when no one was using Twitter and no one was stuck out a tweet, it was because there was a flame war about Kairos I wanted to like weigh in on the side of light for, essentially.
Wow. So
there was actually very little in the film I was trying to convey to you. It's like, it's not like, it's slightly Americanized, it's slightly
girls
funny.
Are allowed to go, which is unusual.
There are girls there. But it's not really exaggerated. So a rife setting for a comedy about sexuality, and incidentally, her angle is kind of all about obviously her sexual awakening and the kind of the complications around that. And I went on my Kairos retreat more or less very shortly after I came out in school, so it's all very raw territory for me. Yeah, we had a good time. We laughed.
Yeah,
there was some weird, gross food stuff in it as well.
There was a lot of weird, yeah.
And I feel like you're getting put through the ringer with that stuff recently. Almost everything we watch has something which I agree is inappropriately disgusting when it comes to old food. Yeah.
Anyway, so Buffy.
So speaking of
discarded shells of things.
Speaking of old trash.
That's a mean way to put it.
Warren isn't introduced in this episode.
You meant Joyce.
No, I didn't.
You meant
you
Joyce.
did.
No, I didn't. Oh, I did. Yeah, you're right.
So this episode, is quite.
It's very unusual.
It's very unusual. It's actually
because it feels like the most run-of-the-mill episode of Buffy you've ever watched, but then it's creating this like sense of simplicity and straightforwardness and movement, all in favor of the aberration of the conclusion of the episode.
So it's actually quite thematically relevant to kind of what Buffy be all about, in terms of there's we introduce Warren, who becomes obviously the main a main villain throughout kind of season 6, and a main contributor to the villain circumstances, and who is the archetypal misogynist in the show. We've had prior examples of that with some of the kind of monsters of the week and tag and things like that in earlier seasons.
Or what was the episode where with the rage juice, Beauty and the Beasts.
Yeah, I was gonna say Angry Boy at Sunnydale High.
Yeah.
And in future we have Caleb in season 7, who's quite misogynistic as well.
Yeah, but in a different kind of like more directed religious way.
Yeah, but Warren is the it of it, and I think for a show like Buffy, you never want a show about women, about feminism, to be defined by their oppressors. That's obviously the way not to go about it, but that's not what Buffy does. It's like it's that the clash of evidently strong, capable, empowered women and the horrible little trolls like Warren, essentially what would now be considered an incel.
Yeah, he certainly is. He's like, he is the absolute antithesis to what Buffy exists for, which is she empowers women, she has an internal strength, and she enables the strength in the people around her, and Warren specifically is interested in removing power from the women around him, and in bettering his own situation. Yeah,
absolutely. And I would say that again, kind of taking things as they come on this watch of Buffy, I think you're going to have to tell me what Warren's actor's name is.
Oh, his name is Adam Bush.
Adam Bush, I knew that. I think Adam Bush does a good job in this episode. I think his portrayal of Warren is like relatable, recognizable is the word I'm looking for. He is just on that side of not actually in any way intimidating, but so like entitled. And what I found quite interesting when you think about how his arc develops and how all that stuff develops, and develops in such an explicitly dark direction. I was reading that like one of the things they try to use on I think the trio try to use in the Rogue is essentially a mystical date rape machine.
Well, you remember what happens to Katrina, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I kind of went back over that.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things, knowing where things go, obviously with Willow and Tara and all that, is both Willow and Tara are quite sympathetic to Warren in the abstract in this episode. They're like, oh yeah, obviously it's weird and gross and all that, but it must be very difficult not to have someone. And Tara's been like, you want someone to share your life with, and maybe this makes it easier. So both of them are actually quite, it kind of adds some interesting like thread to that whole tragedy, is that they're even better than him at this point.
And absolutely, and it also highlights Buffy's position as being so specifically opposite to Warren, because what she's communicating through this episode is her own loneliness, her own lack of engagement from like her own romantic lack of fulfillment, and how she, while feeling alone and sad and being envious of Joyce for her potential prospects, she's kind of like being the odd one out in her friend group who isn't in a relationship, she's able to empathize with April, and she also sees that what Warren has done is wrong, that it's self-centered. I mean, like the I think it really does also, and we'll talk about this so much in season 6, it really highlights the inherent misogyny in a lot of like nerd culture. I mean, just the infantilizing of women, this kind of concept of, oh, if you're a nerd boy and you got invisibility for a day, you would hang out in the girls' locker room. And it's like, maybe don't actually be horrifyingly perverted, because you feel like entitled to it because you've been removed from the social contract.
There's a great episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, if I remember correctly, where they go to a ski lodge and they kind of act out that kind of classic 80s nerd high school, rental nerd high school rom kind of thing with someone who ostensibly has been there since the 80s. And once they kind of go through it, and then once they take the kind of laugh track away, they're like, no, this is just really rapey. And there's nothing like panty rags and drilling holes in the girls' bathrooms. Like everything from top to bottom of this is skin crawling, disgusting, And you're absolutely right, Brian. Like, so much of it is portraying this tongue-in-cheek fashion, which is once you actually kind of get outside the field of effect of it, and which probably many people are never inside of, it's really strange. It's really really upsetting.
No, it's kind of it shows that, like, there are no men who are exempted from, I mean, like, there are no men who are exempted from the privilege of manhood. And there is no perspective there where
the mark of Cain.
There's no situation there where you get to feel entitled to access to women. Even if you've been like, an unattractive child, it doesn't mean that you get to dictate to women that they should pay attention to you now because you're owed it. It's this, like, constant American problem of, like, oh, we were promised this thing and I didn't get it, so I get to take it, right? Yeah. Anyway.
So when we actually look at what Warren does, like, he's an interesting character for a number of reasons. Interesting in terms of what he brings to the show. What I like is that they make a point of positioning that although his first on-screen appearances in this episode, that he did go to Sunnydale High with them. He was present off-screen during the events of that, and when he meets Buffy, there's a great little interaction where she's like, you went to Sunnydale with us, you know who I am, just to clarify that she's the weird girl who fixed everything.
And I actually really like the joke through this episode where as soon as they get back to the magic box after experiencing the April at the party, they're like, she's a robot, right? And everyone's like, yeah, she's a robot for sure. And then when she's talking to when Buffy's talking to Warren, and Warren's like, there's something about April that you can't know, and Buffy's like, no, I know what you're talking about. And he's like, there's no way you could possibly know this. Be prepared. This is going to shock and surprise you. And she's like, no, I know. And he's like, she's a robot. And she's like, yeah, I know.
It's a great lampshading of the fact that Buffy, by and large, never needs to rely on those kind of crutches to make drama. It's like, it's already there.
No, it's actually, like, I mean, it's actually something that I think is not necessary for a great written TV show, in the sense that I think great writing can include your characters not cluing into stuff that they would have realized themselves, because it makes for better drama, it makes for better farce, it makes for better tension. Buffy, doesn't rely on that ever. Like, usually if Buffy would have deduced if the Scoobies would have realized something or communicated about something, they've usually just done that, and they build on that, which I think is a really strong messaging. For this episode, what?
No, I'm not even laughing at you. I was thinking there, this kind of just slightly tangential, but I was recording interviews with people recently, and I was thinking about, as the person watching the person being recorded, it's like when sometimes you overthinks what they're saying so much that you get into such weird shapes. And someone kept saying "thinked," and then they were like, obviously I mean thought, but just like, and I thinked this, and like, these are very intelligent people, but like a lot of that kind of stuff where it's like really kind of like how to be talking person. And then I asked them a question, and some other people would be like, do you want me to respond to that? It's like, yes, like that. It's just the way it fucks with people's heads. It's quite funny.
No doubt. What was I saying? We never really talked about it at the start of this episode, but like, I really liked this episode.
I really enjoyed this episode.
I thought this episode was like a gem.
I think there's so much to say. It's difficult to pick out any episode of Buffy to be like,
show it to someone
to give us exactly. What
are you gonna say?
That, yeah.
Actually,
yeah.
Oh, I thought you were taking the piss out of yourself.
No.
Oh no, you said it about like every episode.
I don't. I say about I more often say I wouldn't show an episode.
Okay, fair enough.
But for this, it's like, it's difficult to give, everything is obviously in context, but this like has a good mix of the kind of the monster of the week stuff,
genuine comedy.
It gives a nice showcase of almost every supporting character.
Great interactions through the characters as well, in terms of just like Buffy to Xander, Willow and Tara, like
Anya and Money,
and
online trading.
Anya and Tara as well. One of their two interactions in the whole show. And
Giles and Joyce. Giles, defending Buffy. Grace, Dawn, Buffy and Joyce all together, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's very sweet.
Packed.
It is packed, and I think situationally it's very, very, very fine tuned. I don't think this is just whatever episode they were like attaching to the prescript. What I'm trying to say there, to the prologue
premise.
Prologue. No, the prologue of the body. Prologue is the thing that comes before.
It is.
Yeah, okay. The prologue of the body. So I mean, like getting into the body stuff a bit. I mean, like this is. It feels like what this episode is saying is here is the natural progression of this show. Buffy isn't in a relationship anymore. She's trying to figure out who she is. She feels like disempowered by the men in her life in a completely reasonable way. Like Angel and Riley both walked away without communicating why or giving her a choice in the matter, and this point, what she communicates to Xander at the end of the episode is, I just need to learn to be with me. I need to learn to be myself and not need a romantic relationship to define who I am. That's just like such a strong communicated message, and it's like, oh, that's a really interesting point, and then it's so aggressively interrupted by life and the horrifying the horrifying non-TV moment of Joyce's death, and that aberration really just ripples backwards through the show, where it feels like such a watershed moment for the show, where everything is transformed and viewed through the lens of that episode.
Yeah, good thing we didn't cry at all when we watched it.
I mean, I 100% just like.
Although you did have something to do in a different room immediately afterwards, so we didn't get a chance to talk.
Who knows if I was really crying? I probably wasn't. So yeah, it was very deeply upsetting. But I think this episode is both great as a standalone episode. Actually, it's actually really genuinely funny. It's well written. It's well structured, and then it's a really, really well tuned lead into the body. I think where it feels like an interruption in every sense. Yeah, no,
100%. And I think as well that I think occasionally I find that this might be a straw man argument, but this idea that Buffy isn't really about feminism, isn't really about gender, isn't really about that sexism and all the issues around that. We look at the multitude of gender-driven interactions in this episode. So just to enumerate them, there's Giles and Joyce when Giles is leaving babysitting her kid. There's Spike to Buffy, Spike to Angel, Spike with the Buffy bot. There's Ben and Buffy.
Buffy feeling like she has to iron herself out and not be a person and just laugh at men's jokes, basically.
Exactly, yeah. And the man she's doing that with, it was kind of portraying a decent guy kind of angle, is actually her enemy who is female presenting at the same time,
which messy gender stuff there,
yeah. There's Warring obviously to April, Warring also to Katrina and to Buffy. There's Tara and Willow as lesbians in relation to each other, but also April. It's heaving under the weight of these definitely driven interactions, which are Alexander as this kind of like on the right side of, but like for want of a nail, potentially could be someone like Warren, which I think is a very interesting element. Yeah,
I think this is a really heavy, not rewriting, but correction of the Xander character. I think they're molding him into what they kind of wanted him to be for a couple of seasons now, which is the brother character who is genuinely supportive and warm and a source of positivity for Buffy. So in this episode, he's a punching bag for her, literally. He offers her a lot of advice. Yeah,
that's kind of quite the on the nose metaphor.
It is, and he's a sounding board for Buffy and and genuine support. I mean, his conversation at the end where he says Buffy's a great person to be around. So that's a great idea. It's completely lacking any of the gross tension they had in the first seasons. It's lacking any aggression that he's portrayed previously. And yeah, it's a genuine good foot forward. I mean, I think he scuppers all that in season 6.
Yeah, but something this episode takes pains to highlight is his quite uncool, but in the same way kind of endearing, developing affection for his craft and for woodwork and for being a I'm not trying to say neither technician or artisan craftsman. That's what I'm trying to say, craftsperson. And how I think both that and the fact that Buffy's relationship with Giles from season 4, which was quite aimless, has been repaired. I think they're both really good examples of it doesn't need to be a dramatic "I sent my boyfriend to hell" moment, but that is character progression. That is people, both Giles and Xander, and the relationship to Buffy seemed unfocused, and now that they have a direction of travel that they're moving in, and Xander in particularly finds his utility. Even something as simple as I can fix the window after the robot threw a vampire through it. That's quite nice. I think it's quite a good message for the show.
I think that there's something very nuanced about that communication as well. If you take Xander as reformed geek, like Xander was he could have gone the way of Andrew and Jonathan and Warren, but I think the defining thing there is that while a lot of nerd culture encourages a perpetual childhood, him finding a genuine passion outside of oh god a passion outside of his pop culture obsessions. I just realized I don't think I have one of those. I don't have any passions that are outside of my pop culture obsessions. I'm making a podcast about Buffy Vampire Slayer, which was my favorite show when I was 12.
Yeah.
Oh fuck.
You're still a little 12 in here.
I'm basically Warren. My voice is going so fucking grubbly.
Warren's climbing out from inside your throat.
But yeah, so I think him finding a passion and a structure and a direction outside of that, and that being his interest rather than his hobbies defining his personality for the rest of his life. I think that's it's a nuanced perspective on manhood and adulthood, which is interesting.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you about April.
Oh yeah, okay, cool.
April being the girlfriend android sex robot that Warren constructs for himself, who is the best. If you're not immediately familiar with the character, I kind of felt like a cheery Summer Glau really was kind of the vibe I got from her from Firefly fame.
Yeah, he says so. I mean,
you've seen Firefly.
No, I don't know very well because I didn't like it.
But she's even in a world of obviously TV actors and California and all that. She's so beautiful and so meant to be perfect and so perky and all that kind of stuff, and has been designed by Warren to only love him and to satiate his every need and to be utterly loyal. And the crux of it being that he gets bored by that and then becomes more attracted to Katrina, who challenges him and doesn't agree with him but has agency. But he also kind of pursues that, but then also doesn't like her agency because he's very sexist and dismissive to her and all that kind of stuff. And April April has no character arc. And I don't say as a critical, but kind of the tragic note of her character is she never grows beyond that. She is she's sacrificial to that theme. She never grows beyond that parameter. And yet, in that limited portrayal, I think the guest actor and the characterization does a great job of portraying that even within these hard-coded limitations, she is a fuller person in some senses than Warren, who is human but is lacking all of these basic human traits of empathy and all that kind of stuff. It's a very interesting interaction, and I thought that found it a couple of things. One, a couple of things I liked throughout the episode. The odd joke aside, they're not kind of cruel to her as a character, and they're not derisive as her as a bimbo or something quote unquote like that. And also at the end when her battery's running down and Buffy's sitting with her on the swing and she's kind of lying to her to say, yep, Warren was very proud of you, you did a great job, you can rest now. It's kind of unexpectedly touching, and I kind of think that following on from that scene where she's kind of comforting someone as they're dying into a scene where she doesn't get to have that with Joyce is such an aggressive juxtaposition, but in a good way. And it's very oh, that was a lovely scene with April, and that's a nice coda to that point, and then obviously the jarringness of something that you don't have control over is very well written. I think
it's also one of the most mature Buffy moments, is going from fighting this person to realizing where they're coming from. And and that because she very much takes on the Giles role in an instance of that kind of lie to me kind of stuff, it all works out in the end. And that's kind of how she's communicating with April, is saying it's going to be fine. And yet Warren's coming back and he's going to be here any second now, and you've done a great job. And that's like, yeah, she's like, I mean, she's in lots of textual ways taken on the adult parental role in that situation, and then to have that so aggressively interrupted by like her most childlike moment in the entire show, of that like last moment of this episode where she's saying mommy, is like it's aggressive, it's very tight, it's very well written. I'm getting emotional.
Also another episode for the eclectic rogues gallery of sci-fi episodes of Buffy.
Yeah, no, 100%. The most definitional part of that being where she is looking at Buffy where April is looking at Buffy and Warren through her like
Terminator gaze, basically.
Like, and it's just it's like Windows 98.
If not even Windows 3.0 or whatever.
It's Windows 95, and she's like looking at Warren, and it's like, fetish is 1, fetish is 2, fetish is 3, or the files popping up for her, and you know, good looking, handsome, snappy dresser,
backrubs.exe,
and it's but it is for sure a sci-fi episode. I like Buffy sci-fi episodes. I think there's more of them to come as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it has this that same cavalier attitude to it that does to its fantasy in many ways. You know, I think the sci-fi can be a nice breath of fresh air in Buffy, at least, because as the fantasy stuff gets more codified, it kind of loses some of that kind of dreamlike element to it. So you know, this I think is an episode that's often cited with the question of like, well, Joss Whedon, how is it possible that he could have done this with this technology, etc.?
You hit the same rip twice in a row and
exactly,
two different notes.
But it's just like, it's the hell note, loser. Get over it, which I quite like.
Should we move on to the dusting, Joel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So
I have a couple of notes for you. So yeah, as we know, Adam Busch, B-U-S-C-H, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, who plays Warren, later dated Amber Benson, who plays Tara, and who Warren does, of course, kill Tara. They were no longer dating as of like 2009 or something, which is fair enough.
Amber Benson, who we previously noted, is incredible.
You're a big fan, I know, yeah.
Big fan of her.
April, the character, was written, and there were wild speculations going through the internet and other places for a couple of years before this that Britney Spears was going to guest on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So the character of April was written for Britney Spears by Joss Whedon, or like conceptualized by Joss Whedon for her. Which is wonderful, and Britney Spears would have been incredible here, I think.
Do you think if it was Britney Spears, do you think that the robot would have been Britney Spears, if you know what I mean? Because I feel like the characters in this world know who Britney Spears is.
No,
so
I don't.
Warren have just built a Britney bot.
Yeah, no, I don't. So that's a very good point. But actually, I think at this point in history, so 2001, early 2001, while Britney Spears was a thing, she was like, 2 years into her career. She wasn't. Yeah. She was a household name, but she wasn't a cultural icon. It'd be like Billie Eilish having a guest role in something now. You wouldn't be like, oh, it's megastar Billie Eilish. She'd just be like, she's just another kid down the street who has green hair. And by the way, the Billie Eilish interview for the year came out today. Remember, those Vanity Fair interviews with Billie Eilish?
Yeah, I didn't. I woke up to you listening to it, and I remember you showing me those previously, and I didn't think it would become relevant to the degree that it has.
I started watching them in the second year, so I'm a real early adopter. They're incredibly wistful, very, very lovely and very nuanced series of interviews where they interview her once a year. They have done once a year for the last 4 years, where she kind of like reacts to her previous ones. And the second one was so sad because she was like 16 and she was so sympathetic towards her 15-year-old self about how crazy her life was about to get.
Gosh.
But also, as I've noted before, I just really like Billie Eilish as a musician. I think she's incredibly talented.
We also found her on TikTok and she was quite funny.
I did find her on TikTok. She put the head of her ukulele, head of her ukulele into her mouth.
Entirely inside her mouth. It was quite funny.
It was so good.
I don't know how much I've mentioned this before, but we have a semi-unannounced habit of at a certain time of night, you never know when it's coming, the witching hour, your TikToks will roll out, which we watch. And I do think the theme of the ones that we enjoy the most
People hurting themselves.
People accidentally hurting themselves. Like people just like at a party going do and then falling down a flight of stairs. And like these people, like there's a funny Benny Hill soundtrack, but these people could potentially be very seriously injured.
I mean, the ultimate expression of humor growing up for me was what was it called in Ireland? America's Home
Corporal
Videos,
Punishment.
basically.
Okay.
But whatever, I can't remember what it was called in Ireland. It was
Funniest Home Videos?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't a home video. I don't think. Actually,
it was a phrase. Anyway, I'll find out for my family later on. But the Billie Eilish, very good, very great interview series. If you haven't watched them, and you probably have because they're incredibly popular, you should watch them. So, wait. Where did this? So Britney, it was written for Britney Spears, basically. She didn't want to do it, however, because she wanted to have a role in which she hung out with the Scooby Gang instead of being a mindless robot.
Mindless sex robot, which I think is kind of a fair point, to be fair. Yeah.
I mean, I would have done it if I were her. The final scene of the episode was written by Joss Whedon, as you may have expected, because it is, it's very momentous season. It also isn't on the script for this episode. It was... so I'm not sure if it was like filmed in the same filming block.
I think also
probably wasn't, because the visual quality of it is very different. The DVD we were watching, the second half of this episode was seemed to be filmed on
stretched the fuck.
It was
bizarre.
It seems like the DP fucked up or something, and they shot it way too dark, and they had to push the film really hard or something. It looked awful, and then the last scene was fine. Otherwise,
I will say that this is I've been waiting to say this is a great takeaway Jeopardy answer or similar, because Joyce doesn't actually die in the body, she dies in this episode.
So true. And Joyce is just, as a final note, Joyce is wonderful. She's very alive, she's very lovely, and she's very full of life in this episode. She's having the time of her life as well, which is great. Do you have any Buffy bits for me there, Joe?
Yeah, so I thought an interesting element was that Dong references and remembers Ted, and kind of building this idea of, I'm still unclear if with the key, if they remember her being there or if she was there for all intents and purposes. Have they changed history, or have they changed everybody's memories? Which I think is quite interesting.
Well, I mean, Joel, is there any difference? If everyone's memories are of this, is any different to reality haven't changed that? Because, the reality of that time, the only existence of it now is the memories.
Whoa.
And
just straight the episode, it's some weird interpolated elements of kind of college culture, still a hangover from season 4. They go to a spring break party, which is why Warren is home. She meets Ben there. There's a whole luau theme, and also bizarrely the idea of him giving her his phone number on a scrap of paper, because it's still kind of othering to think that people have cell phones but they kind of leave them at home a lot of the time. Do you know what I mean? They don't bring them with them, which is just I think it pulls me into a different time zone very much.
Actually, one last note is that Willow does say note how pretty April is, and Tara gets upset at this, and I was saying to you at the time, I was like, that's not accurate for queer relationships. Queer people like to admire people together. Anyway,
speaking for all queer people in a blanket statement.
100%
with authority. Yeah,
we actually have a note from all of them saying they were allowed to. Fashion notes. So
it's a great fashion episode.
Yeah.
Let me say that again.
My favorite. Go on.
Some great fashion in this episode.
My favorite fashion note of the episode, of course, being Joyce in her beautiful
date dress.
Sorry?
Her date dress.
Which is she has worn before for date, and she looks wonderful. It's kind of Japanese inspired. Has some Japanese mid 15th century kind of art on it, and it's black, and she looks beautiful and just very young, actually, to be honest. Another fashion note that I thought was very important was that Dawn says to Joyce about Brian, her date, maybe he's a gigolo, was his shirt all shiny, and I was like, Xander's a gigolo. Anyway, Dawn is wearing a top with a terrifying sheep on it at one point that kind of looks like a dog, and I really liked when Buffy goes to check the time at one point to tell Joyce that 1 minute has passed since the last time she asked about the time. Her watch is upside down and she checks it that way, and I was like, that's an incredibly naturalistic point, because that's how a lot of people check their watches, or that's how I often do it.
You mean on the underarm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it'll slid down or whatever. Other fashion notes.
we
I don't
have
have any.
we have this thing of Ben transitioning, or well, that actually wasn't word I didn't mean in that context, but transforming back into Glory, in her apartment, and him being in her tight red dress,
Yeah.
which is I would say to its credit is only played lightly for situational awkwardness as opposed to like lol, a man in a dress.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's actually played pretty good humoredly. And yet Willow's clothes throughout this episode look like she's been upholstered. She's makeup cut off the Vogue fabric throughout most of the episode.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and just the maybe the other Buffy bit. When Anya and Tara are talking, Anya has some incredible quotes. One of them is, "I had trouble adjusting to the idea of Lutherans," which I must actually send to our friend Jake, who's very Lutheran. And
for his sins.
Huh?
For his sins.
Yeah. And then Anya says that she's tripled her money on the stock markets, basically, that she earned from the magic shop. And she says, "I'm thinking of buying something very expensive, maybe an antelope." And I really respect that.
You do like buying things.
I do. Okay. Death count, please, there, Joe. I think it's just April.
I'm gonna double check that.
Oh, sorry, it's not just April, Joel. Jesus Christ. Okay, I know exactly what the death count is. It's April, whose battery runs out, and Joel, I get to be the person who says the death count. The second death in this episode is Joyce. Joyce is the other person who dies, and that's it. Killed by her brain.
Yes, accurate. So specifically, April's battery depletes, and her mechanisms and circuits are perhaps recycled into the Buffy bot.
It's never clear, yeah.
No, but I think that makes a lot of sense. And Joyce dies of a brain aneurysm in this episode. Joyce Summers.
Nah, we hardly knew you. Okay, rating.
Gosh, I would give this episode a 9.4.
What?
9.4.
What?
9.4 brain aneurysms.
9.4.
I really liked it. I thought it was, and maybe it's just its proximity to the body and all that kind of stuff. But even over the course of talking about it now, like again, would I always include this in a list of my top 10 Buffy episodes? Maybe not, because it's not a clean. I don't have a clean reason why, but like as a representation of the show's championing of kind of progressive gender politics and the importance of women being fully realized. I actually think it's really complex and really worthwhile. Okay. I really enjoy all the interactions, and I thought the stuff with April at the end was kind of really sad.
Yeah, it was really
and really well played. I think for introducing Warren, who is an odious but like a very vital part of the narrative. And if nothing else, a full point bump for Buffy's, like, for Sarah Michelle Gellar's acting in the last scene. Yeah,
something else. Okay, I was going to rate it pretty highly. I was going to go for an 8.8 Randy Sex Kittens out of 10.
That's good too.
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's an overlooked gem. I think that people tend to overrate stuff on the basis of what happens rather than how it happens. So like people really like Crush because there's lots of Spike, Drusilla, messy content. People really like episodes like I'm trying to think what else. Just, stuff with the whirlwind. So, and then people tend to underrate things where just it's very well executed, This being one of them, the Zeppo and Passion. I think Passion is probably the most overlooked episode of Buffy. I mean, I think Passion potentially is one of the absolute best episodes of Buffy, except for the episode we're going to watch next week, which is, I think, maybe the best episode of TV ever made. So yeah, I'm going to give it 8.8 Randy Sex Kittens out of 10, and I'm going to go off and start reading after I edit this episode in preparation for the body. We'll see.
Lots to read, though.
Yeah. Okay, Cordelia Chase.
Yeah, so good episode of Angel this week, in my opinion.
I think so too.
One of my memorable episodes. So the episode this week was Reprise, which is meant to be thematically mirroring Surprise from Buffy in many ways. It's a culmination of the Dark Angel arc, as it were, with him on his solo mission to confront Wolfram and Hart on short order and stop them and kill everything, essentially. So you have, I think, the other trio kind of reaching a low point where, you know, they're kind of not getting paid, they're not getting appreciated. Angel bursts in to steal a book back from them, and Wesley pops his stitches, nearly bleeds out for standing up to Angel, etc. Everyone's at a low point there, and Angel kind of really...
Gunn is threatening to leave as well.
Yeah, but Gunn just leaves the episode because he's not even featured you know, in kind of discussions later on. But yeah, it's I think it's actually what happens in the episode is a good demonstration, extrapolation of what Angel's best thesis is, and in many ways sometimes isn't what Buffy is about. The kind of sense of it being an ongoing struggle. Yeah. So there's a great bit of kind of story set piece around the idea that Wolfram and Hart are undergoing a 75-year review from the senior partners, who are essentially the old ones, or the elder gods, who are implied to be behind the forces of evil. It's the only episode in which even a manifestation of a senior partner appears to do the audit,
inhabiting the body of a common demon.
A Kleinock demon, which I always think is a very good choice for the show, is to not really show where they're from or what they are, etc. Like, I know later in the comics they do show more of that, and it's really just a different kind of demon getting into a spaceship to escape the universe before it implodes. Like, that's kind of where that goes. So that's not interesting. But he plans to confront them. They bring back the human character who was his kind of Giles-like character in the 1950s episode, who's now elderly. So that's an interesting element. They have Darla also trying to take the power from the senior partner, all of that coming to a head, and, you know, Angel's plan is successful. He kills the senior partner demon. He gets the ring, which will let him to travel back to the home office
and the
gauntlet, and stab evil in the heart. And one of the better scenes in Angel, one of the better themes, is he gets in an elevator in LA. Holland Manners, who is the former head of Wolfram and Hart, who is dead but still servicing the company. And he goes all the way down to the source of evil and the source of, you know, where all the sadness and darkness in the world comes from. And they let him out from the elevator back in LA where he started. And the point being, like, you can't stab evil. You can't kill it, because evil works because of people, not in spite of them. And that the struggle will always be ongoing, and that Earth is, for better or for worse, the source of its own problems. And he reaches the point of ultimate despair and finds Darla and has sex with her. And the ending scene is meant to, like, elicit the same imagery as when he has sex with Buffy, and the implication being that he is going to lose his soul. But yeah, I think it's an enjoyable episode. It's straightforward. You know what's happening in it. Yeah. There's good actors in it who do good portrayals, and there's quotable lines, and there's some kind of philosophical, like, morsels to chew on with it. So I'll probably give it a solid, like, 7 failed feminist gestures.
Oh, you can go for 8.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to change it though.
No, you're not. I was going to go for 8 failed feminist gestures.
Actually, I did say you misheard me.
No.
Yeah, 8 failed feminist gestures. I think we agree, which is great. So I enjoyed it.
It was good. And, like, we were talking about this at the time, but, like, I have such an issue with Angel as a show because I find it so hard to judge its high points, because they're so firmly couched in shit, you know?
Brian.
Like, that last episode, Joel, was awful. The episode with the freezing of the girl, like,
that's a particularly bad episode, but
like, all this nonsense is so insidious, and the low points of Angel are not enjoyable, whereas the low points of Buffy are just wonderful. You know, there's rarely an episode of Buffy that I don't find comforting, warm, fun, engaging, and when Angel is bad, it's really bad. So when it comes to good episodes, it feels like even the good episodes have quite a lot of, like, dialogue, content, and structure, which is aimless, and, you know, this happened and this happened and this happened, you know? Whereas Buffy constantly has a great internal structure within episodes. It's very well done. So with this episode, I'm like, you know, this is probably considered like one of the 10 out of 10 episodes of Angel. It's like, well, it's probably not. You know, it's probably not a 10 out of 10 episode of a TV show. It might be a very good example of an Angel episode. But I find it very hard to judge. Though I think as this season concludes into season 3 and into early season 4, there's a lot of high quality stuff there, and it has a lot of ease. Like, I think it eases into itself a lot better, which I think is definitely to its benefit.
And I think something we hit on while we were discussing it is ultimately that franchises are a strange concept, and the idea of if it is exactly like the parent show in a different location, what's the point? If it's different, how is it the same to a certain degree? And really individualistic properties like I think Buffy and like say the Alien film, the original, which we discussed before, while franchises do create from them, the original property doesn't imply that there's anything else in the universe. It's very self-contained. So I think the fact that I think what you're looking for with something like Angel is something very different from Buffy. I think probably the viewership, while it obviously overlapped, probably had different viewers. Definitely people who didn't go to Angel, and probably some people who watched Angel who weren't particularly interested in Buffy as well,
which is just wild.
Yeah, I know. But so I think you absolutely have to judge it on its own merits, moment to moment, of am I getting Angel as vampire detective on a quest from this kind of thing?
Am I getting plot episode Angel? Am I getting and like that's fair.
And enjoy the characters and enjoy them together.
And that's the thing, is that I enjoy specifically Angel as a character. I enjoy Cordelia. I enjoy Wesley.
Gunn is also there.
I like Darla a lot.
Darla, Fred is coming later. You like Fred?
I like Fred a lot, actually. Yeah, because of course I do. That's literally the only character I like in any show.
The Phoebe, yeah.
The Phoebe, yeah.
Okay, so I think that's probably everything for this week.
Yeah.
I'm like, and we next week.
I'm excited for it. I like The Body is my favorite episode of TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for listening, for getting here with us on this journey. If you enjoyed this episode, of course, please let us know. Tell your friends, tell the incels in your life that they'll hate it, and that's good. And take care, be well, and we will see you next time on Buffy Boys.
Buffy Boys. See you.